Hi, I'm Jenny White with Restore Oklahoma Public Education. This is Lynn Hoblitzel, who is a board member, and Julia C. And we're here today talking with Joy Hoffmeister, who is, I believe, as you know, running against Janet Barisi in the primary for which we need to vote on June 24th. So we've asked her here today to just ask her a couple of questions that we felt like were important for you to know to be able to make your best decision come June 24th. So I'm going to turn it over to Lynn. Lynn's going to ask the first question today.
Joy, tell us what your thoughts are on school choice and where you stand on that.
Very good. Well, I believe we have to support a parent's right to advocate for their children. I'm the mother of 4 kids. All have gone through public education. I grew up in private school. So I serve in a professional world that includes homeschool parents and students, those in private school, public school, virtual school, and online alternatives and charters. So I have actually a lot of respect for how that can be done successfully, but it must be about parents and parents making the decision that best fits the needs of their individual students.
You know, one thing that has been in the news, obviously, a whole lot, has been Common Core.
Yeah.
And as you know, that on Thursday, our governor did sign HB 3399, which was the removal and replacement of Common Core in Oklahoma. Now, I think what everybody would like to know, and certainly what we would like to know, is how do you feel about implementing that law? Are you staunchly against Common Core? I mean, tell us a little bit about your feelings about the bill.
I understand the noble intentions earlier when Common Core was adopted as a concept for bringing high standards to Oklahoma. And I think it's really important that we really understand and appreciate many who came together who wanted to really reduce the skills gap in our student education so that they were ready for their next steps in learning without need for college remediation, or they were ready to go in for their certification in our career technology centers. However, we have needed a leader who would listen and who would take time to understand what Common Core is. And I do believe that it has become polluted from its original noble concept, but we adopted something that was a concept. And after the standards were written, I can't support those standards after having the time spent with Oklahomans in education, those who are experts in the study of the alignment of the curricula, and those who understand in child development what's appropriate in some of the earlier portions. So as I've taken time, and actually I've put about 54,000 miles on my car in Oklahoma over the last year. And during that time, and really early on, I began to realize, first of all, that Common Core meant very different things to different people. Mm-hmm. And so I needed to sort out and understand, what is Common Core?
Well, everybody wants high standards for their kids.
Right.
I think that's the big...
We have that in common. Mm-hmm. And I think that what we have to do, and what I began to realize, is there's a lot of common ground. Yes. And we want our students to be prepared. We want them to be able to graduate with confidence that they are ready for their next steps in learning. But we cannot accept Common Core. It will never work in Oklahoma. It wasn't vetted here. And I believe we have to have standards that reflect our values without losing the high standards that need to be in place. But that Common Core is not the silver bullet for some magical solving problems only because we adopted something that others adopted, but it has, I think, been polluted by those who want to nationalize our education system throughout our country. And that this is moving in a direction that I can't support, because I do see that if this began with Barack Obama's race to the top incentive, that if you pass the concept then and into law, then we will allow you to apply for money that we then didn't get, but we are left with the concept that later has developed into standards. And then we take a look at those standards and say, we're not comfortable and we want to make some adjustments. And now, even the discussion of that by our own state legislators in the House and Senate who say, we're not comfortable, we want to revisit this, and then now we have such, I think, a compelling threat that does not respect our state's rights.
Yeah,
and that's a
exactly.
concern. I think this is moving in the wrong direction. We need to have standards that Oklahomans can have confidence in, and that will close the skills gap where that is occurring, and will prepare our students for a bright future. And we want them to stay in our state and set
How
our
do you
roots.
see, how do you see No Child Left Behind fitting into
Well, that's the real problem. I really feel like that's the issue, that if we are going to really make changes so that we are reducing regulation, and making it so that we can set high expectations.
Right.
But then I believe government needs to get out of the way and let teachers teach.
Two of the biggest issues over this last school year were the data collection and also the testing. How would you improve those two issues?
Well, first of all, on data collection, I think that we are going to have scenarios that we can't even imagine in the future. And so it's hard to write very specific language about how to safeguard student privacy. So we have to look at basic principles. And for me, that is that, a parent is the one who makes the decisions about what is released, okay,
Yes.
for their students. And so what's appropriate data for the state or federal government to have? Whatever a parent has said it's okay and given their consent. And we need to also make sure that parents understand what they are agreeing to. So that's another part of that. They have to be informed. But this is something that we must make sure that we have full disclosure and that parents understand what is being asked and taken. But when we come to this, it reminds me of something that, as a state board member, I saw egregious breaches of student privacy. And in fact, it kind of comes in the same conversation that we've had with this week on school choice with the Lindsay Nicole Henry Scholarship. I think that my opponent, Janet Brucey, is wanting us to forget and is distracting from what did occur in the State Department of Education under her watch when students, some of whom were special education students,
Yes.
private records,
Yes.
their portfolio, their IEP information, test scores, personal addresses, all of this was uploaded and published for worldwide consumption on the State Department of Education's website. This is to your point about consent. This is also speaks to the privacy and work that needs to be done to ensure that special education students are respected and not in some way used for political gain. And that is what I sent. I actually wrote an email demanding that be taken down. It was ignored and refused to come off that website for over a week.
Yeah.
And there were people reaching out from New York City and different organizations across the country outraged over this. And that is the kind of troubling leadership that I saw as a State Board of Education member. If you don't mind, I'd like to say something about the Lindsay Nicole Henry Scholarship.
Yes.
That is something that as a board member also, I voted to expand the choices for parents so that there were more schools that they could choose to attend and apply and use that scholarship. And professionally, I've actually encouraged families to use this. Because when it comes down to it, this is what drives my decision making and what I support. I want to see parents engaged, not discouraged from parent engagement. I want to see them as advocates for their children. And I believe every parent needs to be their child's best advocate and utilize every opportunity that's afforded to them within our laws and within the options within districts and within Oklahoma. So I must stand with parents and also as a parent of a child in special education myself. I have my own student in our family who was on an IEP from kindergarten through 12th grade, and I've had about 15 years professionally working as an advocate with parents for student rights of special education students, and that's something that I think right now is getting lost in people's memory. And it's very important people understand, and I want to set the record straight.
And also then about the testing.
Testing. Okay, so this is really a big issue because it's the high stakes nature of what we're doing that is driving a climate that has become so toxic, where the higher the stakes, the greater the attention and focus will be on what will be on the test. And what happens is it pushes away those subjects that make for a well-rounded education.
Exactly.
I've talked to band teachers who can't even have band because they're too worried about doing the test.
It is not good for students. The stress level is not healthy. We are seeing vibrant professionals wanting to leave.
That's right.
And we are losing great people because of the stress, and it's unnecessary.
Well, now we say high stakes, and I just want to make sure people understand what that is. High stakes testing means that the tests are tied back to the grade that the school gets, correct?
Yes.
And if the school doesn't make an A, B, or C, then there are measures, this is all under No Child Left Behind that you mentioned before, that can be taken to straighten that school out for the parents.
Right.
So that's one thing. And then also, too, we have teachers now that are going to be graded on the grades of the test. So there's a lot of frustration and angst now that's going along with those
And when I
exams.
say high stakes, Jenny, I'm also referring to a third grader who's taking their very first standardized test, and it has high stakes attached to it that we have not applied to anyone else. Even someone taking their bar exam, has an opportunity to take that again.
Right.
So I think when we reduce something to a single indicator and say high stakes outcome are going to be, dependent on how you perform, we remove the full body of work that a child has demonstrated out of the equation on how to evaluate that student and their needs. And so this is where it begins to be, I think the question is, who does this serve? Is it serving the student? I think that's where we have to look at, why are we doing what we're doing? And it has to come back to trusting the expert in the classroom. You know what? Here's the deal. Ronald Reagan said, those closest to the problem have the best hope of solving it.
Absolutely.
And in education, I believe that means those closest to the students have the best hope of serving them in the most appropriate, most effective way. And I see that as parents.
Absolutely.
And the teacher in the classroom, a reading specialist who is able to observe that student. And so for me, what we did this year was said, end social promotion, absolutely. But let's make sure we do not disengage parents from the process.
Absolutely.
And I have a problem when a state agency says, we know best. Well, I disagree. I think it is a parent and their teacher and those who have spent most time with them who need to be able to provide input along with evaluative tools.
Well, I think we'll stop there for now. We had a great time talking with you today, and I really appreciate you talking with us. And thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And get out there and vote June 24th. Thanks.